Hello everyone. I bet you're watching this video to relax your mind and drift off to sleep. So if you enjoy it, don't hesitate to like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, let me know where you're from and what time you're watching. Are you ready? The exciting story begins right here.
Shanti Cooper was a dedicated mother to her son Jackson, whom she shared custody with her ex-husband Jim Cooper. She separated from Jim in 2013, marking a new chapter in her life. After her divorce, Shanti was ready to start dating again. However, she noticed that the world of dating had changed significantly since she last ventured into it. Online dating had become the popular way to meet people. Determined to embrace this new way of finding love, Shanti created a Match.com account. As Shanti navigated through various profiles on the site, she connected with several men. However, none of them stood out quite like David Tronas. David, like Shanti, had recently ended a years-long marriage and was ready for something new and fun. Their connection grew stronger as they exchanged phone calls, text messages, and emails. After months of getting to know each other, David made the bold move to Orlando, Florida, to be closer to Shanti. Their bond had blossomed into something deeper, and they could not resist being physically together. Shanti's love for her son never wavered, and she ensured that her dating life with David was consistent with her parental responsibilities. She prioritized her son's well-being and ensured that everyone involved understood the importance of maintaining a healthy family dynamic. In 2015, Shanti and David moved to Delaney Park, an upscale suburb near downtown Orlando. Delaney Park is a beautiful and family-friendly neighborhood. Known for its affluent community, Delaney Park offers its residents a top-notch lifestyle. The neighborhood boasts an excellent school system, providing quality education to its students. With its well-maintained landscaping and proximity to various amenities, Delaney Park is desirable for families seeking a comfortable and safe environment. David purchased a home in Delaney Park for $600,000 in cash and placed it in a trust for him and his mother. The home David purchased for him and Shanti was 4,000 square feet, with a pool, a garage, and an apartment above it. This spacious property provided them with comfortable living and space and ample amenities. Shanti and David were excited to move into their new house and embrace a new chapter in their lives. However, upon closer inspection, they realized that certain aspects of the home didn't quite align with their vision of the future. Despite their love for their new home, the upstairs bedrooms were cramped and lacked functionality. Faced with this challenge, David and Shanti embarked on a renovation project that would completely transform their house into a dream home. Driven by her passion for design and home improvement, Shanti agreed to foot the bill for the project. To execute their vision, David and Shanti hired a team of skilled contractors who effectively dismantled their entire house. This step was necessary in order to reconstruct the upstairs bedrooms and create a layout suitable for their plans. As the work on the house progressed, the bedrooms were temporarily out of order. Shanti decided to reside in the apartment above the garage, which allowed her to continue her daily routine without disruption and provided her with a dedicated workspace. Meanwhile, David found himself in a makeshift dwelling in the garage, spending quality time with their dogs. David's obsession with restoring his home grew exponentially. It became more than just a project, it became an integral part of his life. Every waking moment was spent overseeing the work, making necessary adjustments, and ensuring every detail was meticulously planned and executed. His entire world revolved around the restoration process, and the home started to take on a life of its own. In 2018, 3 years after the commencement of the renovation project, little to no progress was made. The entire inside of the home had been gutted, leaving nothing but a shell of a building. Desperate to find a solution, David turned to a local home renovator who had a hit reality television series on A&E, Zombie House Flippers. Zombie House Flippers is a television series that follows a group of real estate investors who purchase and renovate dilapidated homes. The series producer approached David and Shanti's home in Delaney Park to determine if it would be suitable for the upcoming season. Amidst the turmoil surrounding their home renovations, the couple tied the knot in 2017, a decision that surprised many of their friends and family. Shanti, known for her private nature, had managed to keep the marriage a secret, even from her close grandmother, who she was especially close to. This decision was not particularly surprising to those who knew Shanti, as she was known for her discretion when it came to her personal life. By mid-April 2018, Zombie House Flippers had made plans to start filming at David and Shanti's home in May. However, the producer encountered difficulties getting David and Shanti to sit down to discuss how the show would go. The producer noticed a distinct difference between David's enthusiasm and Shanti's apparent lack of commitment. While David was primarily interested in the flipping series, Shanti seemed to be going along with it merely to humor her husband. The tension between David and Shanti regarding their home was palpable. Shanti had invested significant money in the renovations, and her name wasn't even on the trust that owned the house. Despite David's promise to add Shanti to the trust, he failed to follow through on this commitment, which caused further strain in their relationship. By the end of April 2018, things seemed to be coming together for David and Shanti. However, at 3:51 p.m. on April 24, 2018, David called 911 in hysterics, explaining that he found his wife Shanti in the bathtub and she was not breathing. During the phone call with the 911 dispatcher, David's screams could be heard in the background as he frantically tried to explain the situation. When police arrived at David and Shanti's home, they found Shanti deceased in the bathtub. Declared a crime scene, the area was immediately secured and the investigation began. Meanwhile, David was transported to the police department for questioning. David told the investigators that the morning started like any other. According to David, Shanti woke up between 7 and 7:30 a.m. At around 9:30 a.m., he went for a 1-hour walk, leaving his wife home. Upon returning from the walk, David claimed that he had taken measurements for the renovations. After completing the measurements, David stated that he left again around noon to take his and Shanti's dogs to Park of Americas, an off-leash dog park near the Orlando Executive Airport. David claimed he often went there to let the dogs play and enjoy the open space. He said before he left the house, he didn't speak to Shanti and assumed she was in the garage apartment relaxing. David told the detectives that when he returned home from the dog park, he immediately went outside and started doing chores in the yard. He spent approximately 30 minutes taking care of various tasks before he decided to head inside. Upon entering his home, he heard the sound of water coming from inside the bathroom, which caught his attention, and he decided to investigate further. As he approached the bathroom, David claimed that the door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open and discovered a shocking sight. Shanti, his wife, lay unconscious in the bathtub, her body submerged halfway in the water. David claimed panic overcame him, and he immediately called 911 to report the incident. During the interview, David described how Shanti had been excited about their future and the vision they had for their home. They had been looking forward to a bright future together. Although David appeared upset, and his story about finding his wife in the tub seemed plausible, the detective interviewing him harbored suspicions. The discrepancies in David's account raised red flags. When the police officers arrived at the Delaney Park home after David called 911, they observed that there was no wet substances in the bathroom, which would be expected if David had genuinely attempted to rescue his wife from a half-filled bathtub. This detail called into question the validity of David's story. Furthermore, the severity of Shanti's injuries did not align with David's account of her falling into the tub. When Shanti's body was moved at the crime scene, it was evident that she was covered in blood and bruises, which could not have been caused by a simple fall. An autopsy later revealed that Shanti's cause of death was blunt force trauma and strangulation, and her manner of death was ruled a homicide. These inconsistencies prompted the detective to confront David regarding the discrepancies in his story. The detective asked David about blood that investigators found on Shanti's bed, and David said that was from her menstrual cycle. However, the amount of blood found did not make sense, raising further suspicions. The detectives threw out different theories as to what could have happened to motivate David to kill Shanti and get a reaction from David. The detective asked David if the state of the couple's home renovation had anything to do with Shanti's death, but David said no. Then, the detective asked David if Shanti was angry with him since she was not on the trust for the home. And again, David said Shanti never had an issue with that. The detective suspected that Shanti's death may have been motivated by her life insurance policy. Her policy had a payout of $250,000 to her husband David, which raised suspicions. During the interview, the detectives asked David if her death was an accident that occurred during rough intercourse. However, he denied having any involvement in harming Shanti. Despite David's denial, the detectives felt that there was sufficient evidence to suggest David's involvement in Shanti's murder. They believed that he had faked crying on the 911 call and during the interview. The detectives suspected that David had staged an emotional response to throw off suspicion. But before David left the police department, he agreed to take a polygraph test. However, it was late at night, and the detectives were unable to locate a polygrapher to administer the test immediately. As a result, David was released and allowed to return home. Before leaving, David provided his DNA, nail clippings, and fingerprints to the detectives for examination and comparison to any evidence found at the crime scene. The detectives hoped that these samples would help them gather more evidence and establish a link between David and Shanti's murder. Investigators who examined the crime scene at David and Shanti's home noted that Shanti had one earring on and one off on her nightstand. Additionally, Shanti's watch was off on the nightstand at the time of her murder. These findings were significant to the detectives as they suggested that Shanti may have been in the process of getting ready for bed when the murder took place. Furthermore, Shanti's cell phone was found on her nightstand. However, the investigators noted that there was no activity on it after 11:30 p.m. on April 23, 2018. The medical examiner's report revealed that Shanti did not have any defensive wounds, which led the detectives to believe that she was unaware of the impending attack. The detectives theorized that Shanti was sitting on the end of her bed, removing her jewelry, when David attacked her from behind. They felt this assault resulted in Shanti's death, and David moved her body into the bathtub. Another significant finding was that nothing appeared missing from the home, so the detectives ruled out robbery as a motive. However, one item that seemed to be missing was Shanti's $15,000 engagement ring. As the detectives conducted their investigation, they soon discovered that David's portrayal of his and Shanti's happy marriage did not align with the perception of others who knew Shanti. According to these individuals, David had a habit of hiding her son Jackson's toys and returning them when Jackson inquired about them. The detectives believed that David was employing these tactics to play psychological games with Shanti and her son. During their search of the garage where David was sleeping, investigators stumbled upon an unplugged refrigerator filled with children's toys. This discovery further solidified the detectives' theory that David was engaging in manipulative behavior. By hiding Jackson's toys and returning them intermittently, David attempted to control Shanti and her son's emotions. After the detectives served a search warrant on Shanti and David's Delaney Park home, they confiscated the couple's computers. They found notes on Shanti's computer that shed light on her discontent with her marriage with David. In these notes, Shanti referred to David as cheap, controlling, and narcissistic. Whenever they went out to eat, Shanti wrote, David never paid, and on occasion when he did offer, he always had an excuse, claiming he forgot his wallet. Shanti expressed feeling sad and lonely, afraid, and no longer wanting to be part of the life that they built together. She stated that her mental unhappiness was a result of her poor interactions with her husband, David. Further, these notes highlighted the fact that Shanti was under a significant amount of stress living in a home under construction. As the detectives continued to investigate the murder of Shanti, they discovered important information that linked David to her death. It was revealed that Shanti had been hospitalized for 3 days in the months before her body was found. The detectives were also informed that Shanti had expressed concerns about her eating habits and mentioned to her nanny that she could no longer consume spicy foods or drink alcohol. Additionally, Shanti had started losing weight rapidly, which raised suspicion amongst the detectives. The detectives were puzzled by the absence of any toxic substance found in Shanti's body during the toxicology tests conducted during her autopsy. Despite the lack of evidence, they began to suspect that David may have been poisoning Shanti. However, they were unsure what substance could have been responsible as the tests did not reveal anything. Further investigation revealed that David had previously been married before he married Shanti. The detectives were curious about the details of his previous marriage and decided to explore it further. They discovered that David's first wife, Carol, faced similar health issues as Shanti. David had met Carol on a blind date in 1997, and the couple hit it off immediately. 2 years later, they got married. The detectives began to wonder if there was anything similar between Carol's health issues and Shanti's sudden decline in health. Shortly after the couple wed, Carol began to experience a series of health issues that left her feeling constantly nauseous, fainting at times, and experiencing severe reactions when consuming spicy food and drinks, particularly alcohol. Her former close friends expressed suspicion to detectives that David may have started poisoning her after their marriage. Wanting to delve deeper into David's background, the detectives flew to Minnesota in November 2018 from Florida to interview Carol in person. During the recorded conversation with Carol, she recounted her ongoing struggles with chronic pain and immune system issues that she said were not definitively diagnosed. Carol emphasized the importance of understanding her background in order to grasp the significance of her health issues. She stated that he was responsible for cooking their meals during her marriage to David. The detectives questioned Carol about the possibility of David's involvement in her health issues. They considered it to be too much of a coincidence that both David's wives had exhibited similar health issues. However, Carol adamantly denied any notion that her former husband had intentionally poisoned her. She insisted that her health issues persisted even after their separation. During the investigation into Shanti's homicide, detectives received a phone call from an employer of Club Orlando, a private men's spa. The club offered various amenities such as hot tubs, pools, a gym, and dark rooms where individuals could engage in sexual activity. To become a member, individuals had to purchase a pass or membership. The employee speaking to the detectives revealed that Donald Trones had several memberships at Club Orlando. They stated that David consistently renewed his membership every 6 months without fail. This employee claimed to have seen David engaging in sexual acts with other males. When detectives spoke to Shanti's acquaintances, they all expressed that Shanti would never condone or tolerate her husband engaging in same-sex relationships. This evidence raised the question of whether Shanti had discovered that David had been engaging in such relationships and threatened to leave him and stop funding their home renovations. The detectives considered the possibility that Shanti's anger or frustration could have escalated, leading to her murder. As they continued their investigation, the detectives carefully examined all evidence, including the information provided by the employee of Club Orlando. They sought to determine if the spa membership and alleged sexual activity could give any insights into the circumstances surrounding Shanti's death. When the forensic test results came back from the state crime lab, it was determined that Shanti's DNA had been found underneath David's fingernails, and his prints were the only prints discovered in the bathtub. This evidence contradicted David's version of events, as he claimed that Shanti accidentally fell while stepping into the tub. The detectives, however, had expected to find her prints there as well, but they were not present. On August 29, 2018, David was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. David was held without bond. News of David's arrest shocked his friends, who could not believe that he was responsible for Shanti's murder. They thought the police were looking for an easy way to close the case and were not taking the necessary steps to ensure that the right person was held accountable for the crime. Yet the detectives conducted a thorough investigation, following up on every tip they received regarding Shanti's murder before they arrested David. One of the leads they pursued involved a homeless man in Delaney Park who resembled Academy Award-nominated actor Woody Harrelson. The detectives tracked this man down and interviewed him, ultimately clearing him of suspicion. In addition to following the tip, the detectives knew it was important to check out her ex-husband Jim Cooper as a potential suspect. Shanti and Jim had gone through a tumultuous divorce, raising questions about whether things may have escalated to the point where Jim murdered Shanti. The detectives interviewed Jim and eliminated him as a suspect due to his alibi. After David's arrest, A search warrant was served at his mother's home in Orlando, where he had been staying. Inside the suitcase, the detectives discovered Shanti's missing engagement ring, which had disappeared the night she was murdered. This evidence further strengthened their case and confirmed their suspicion that David was the perpetrator. In July 2019, a jailhouse informant provided detectives with crucial information regarding a confession made by David, stating that Shanti had discovered text messages on David's phone revealing his sexual relationships with multiple men. This revelation sparked a heated argument between Shanti and David, with Shanti erupting into fury and cursing, threatening to tell everyone and demanding a divorce. According to the information provided, David allegedly admitted to having blacked out before striking Shanti, ultimately resulting in her death. Furthermore, the informant revealed that they had known David before their incarceration, having seen him around Club Orlando. The inmate also shared that David mentioned Cambo, a poisonous secretion from an Amazonian giant monkey frog used in controversial treatments. This inmate claimed that David had confided in them that this substance could be used as a poison that would kill someone without leaving any evidence on a toxicology report. David's trial was delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, like countless others in the country. David's legal proceedings were put on hold due to the ongoing health crisis. The pandemic disrupted the normal course of justice, creating significant delays in various cases, including David's. In 2022, after nearly 2 years of delay, David's trial finally commenced. However, the outcome was unexpected. David was found incompetent to stand trial after the defense and the prosecution's medical experts examined him. The experts conducted a thorough evaluation to determine David's mental competency to stand trial. Based on the review, they came to the conclusion that he had an ongoing manifestation of schizophrenia. After a 6-day trial, in October 2023, David was found guilty by a jury and was sentenced to life in prison. Peter Chadwick, born in England to an affluent family, lived a comfortable and privileged life. His father, a successful real estate investor, enjoyed a multi-billion-dollar income, provided Peter with the best education from an early age. He attended prestigious schools and received a solid academic foundation. When Peter reached his teenage years, his family relocated to the United States of America, settling in the state of Pennsylvania. He attended high school in Bryn Mawr. After high school, Peter pursued higher education at Arizona State University. During this period, he met Kui Chu Lim, known to most as QC. QC came from a Malaysian family with vast wealth and connections. She was the younger sister of a prominent businesswoman who owned the largest latex glove manufacturer in the country. Despite their opposite personalities, Peter and QC hit it off instantly. While Peter was reserved and socially awkward, QC was known for outgoing nature and quick wit. Their differences initially attracted them to each other, and they continued to date through their college years. Peter's acquaintances described him as being notoriously difficult to get to know. On the other hand, QC was known for her charismatic and engaging personality. She was the life of the party and always made people around her laugh. Her intelligence combined with her infectious charm made her a magnetic force within her social circles. Eventually, Peter and QC tied the knot and settled in Newport Beach, California. This picturesque location was home to millionaires whose lavish mansions lined the streets. Peter and QC fit right in, driving luxury cars and wearing designer clothes. They lived in the lap of luxury, surrounded by others who shared a similar lifestyle. While Peter managed his father's properties, he remained home a lot, while QC stayed at home and cared for the house and their growing family. Being a dedicated and driven parent, QC ensured that her 3 sons had the best life had to offer. She believed in the importance of a well-rounded education and pushed them to study hard and achieve high grades. Additionally, she encouraged them to participate in extracurricular activities and sports, teaching them the value of teamwork and physical fitness. QC wanted her sons to have a global perspective. By exposing them to different cultures and languages, she hoped that they would develop a broader understanding of the world. She believed in the value of travel, and she took her sons on frequent trips to broaden their horizons. From visiting ancient ruins to experiencing different cultures, QC believed that travel was a valuable learning experience that would shape her sons into well-rounded young men. Despite their wealth and success, the Chadwick family remained private and low-key. They preferred to keep to themselves, preferring to focus on their family and close-knit relationships. However, everyone knew QC and Peter, and they would often be seen picking up their sons from the bus stop at the end of the day. On Wednesday, October 10, 2012, on a bright and sunny 70-degree day in California, QC and Peter's two youngest sons got off the school bus, expecting to see one of their parents. However, neither parent was at the bus stop. One of QC and Peter's neighbors witnessed the boys standing alone at the bus stop past 4 p.m., knowing right away that something was wrong. It was unlike either QC or Peter to leave their children stranded. The neighbor picked up the boys and drove them home. However, when she got to the door, there was no answer. Although Peter's car was not in the driveway, QC's car was present. Upon arriving at the Chadwick residence, the neighbor noticed several packages on the doorstep, indicating that no one had been home all day. Since QC was a stay-at-home parent and Peter worked from home, someone should have been present to collect the deliveries. However, no one seemed to be home. The neighbor became increasingly worried and decided to take action. She brought QC and Peter's youngest sons back to her home, where she notified the police to request a welfare check on the Chadwick residence. The officers investigating the disappearance of QC and Peter Chadwick arrived at the Chadwick home in Newport Beach. Upon their arrival, they thoroughly examined the outside of the residence. They noticed there were no signs of forced entry. After gaining entry, the officers found themselves in the living room, which appeared meticulously clean. The carpet was adorned with very distinct vacuum lines, indicating it had been recently vacuumed. As the officers walked around the house, they saw that it showcased family photos depicting what appeared to be a typical happy family. Moving on to the kitchen, the officers noticed a meal being prepared but left unfinished. It was as if the person making the meal had vanished into thin air. The utensils and ingredients were scattered, indicating that the dish had been interrupted abruptly. After finding no leads downstairs, the detectives proceeded to climb the stairs of the Chadwick residence. Upon entering the bedroom of QC and Peter, the officers discovered signs of violence. The bathroom floor rug was bunched in the corner of the room. There was a broken vase on the edge of the tub, and blood was evident. This discovery prompted the officers to declare the home a crime scene and promptly call for backup. As crime scene investigators arrived at the Chadwick residence, they immediately noticed that a safe in QC and Peter's bedroom had been opened, and its contents were missing. This discovery led the detectives to believe that money and important documents were potentially stolen. The empty safe further intensified their suspicion regarding the couple's whereabouts. Without concrete leads, detectives contacted various institutions, including hospitals, jails, and the coroner's office. They conducted a thorough search to see if anyone matching the couple's description had been admitted or taken into custody. However, their efforts yielded no results, raising even more concerns about the fate of QC and Peter. On October 11, 2012, the San Diego Police Department received a distressing phone call from Peter Chadwick. He claimed he was calling from an Arco gas station approximately 100 miles from the Chadwick's residence in Newport Beach. In the call, Peter exhibited erratic behavior and rambled on incoherently. According to Peter, on October 10th, he hired a man, Juan, to give an estimate on a painting job in his home. Peter stated that he had come across Juan while checking out an apartment complex he manages. As Juan went upstairs to assess the walls for future painting work, Peter remained downstairs working on his computer. While engrossed in his work, Peter suddenly heard his wife QC shout his name from the upstairs master bedroom. Instinctively, he rushed upstairs to find Juan strangling QC in the bathtub while also holding her underwater. Panicked and terrified, Peter attempted to intervene, but Juan pulled out a Swiss Army knife and kept him at bay, continuing the assault on QC. Peter stated that an altercation between him and Juan started, but QC was already dead by the time he mentioned this. After QC died, Peter claimed that Juan coerced him into wrapping the body in a green comforter, and then both of them carried QC's body into the back of Peter's Lexus. He He alleged that Juan forced him to drive around Southern California with QC's body in the back seat. According to Peter, he was pulled over by a highway patrol, but the patrol officer let him go. Peter said he drove with Juan and QC's body for about 4 miles away from the Mexican border to an Arco gas station. At this gas station, Juan contacted his friend, referred to as Chi. When Chi arrived, they transported QC's body into a van and fled the scene, leaving Peter behind at the gas station. While on the phone with the dispatcher, Peter stated that he believed Juan and Chi were heading in the direction of Mexico, where they planned to dismember and dispose of QC's body. Police officers met Peter Chadwick at the Arco station and brought him into the police department for an interview. During the interview, the detectives investigating QC's disappearance noted several concerning details. Firstly, Peter was covered in scratches all over his body, suggesting an altercation had taken place. Additionally, the detectives observed a human bite mark on Peter's forearm, which further raised suspicions. When questioned about the alleged events surrounding his wife's disappearance, Peter displayed no emotion. This unusual lack of emotion contributed to the detective's suspicion. Furthermore, Peter demonstrated no concern for his children throughout the interview. He did not ask about them or express concern for their safety or well-being, which was yet another red flag for the detectives. With Peter in custody, the detectives returned to the Chadwick home to continue their investigation. Upon their return, they noticed that the walls had recently been painted. The discovery puzzled the detectives, as it contradicted Peter's claim that he had recently recruited Juan for a painting estimate. Why would he have hired someone to perform a paint estimation if the house had recently been painted? This inconsistency raised further doubts about Peter's story and led them to continue their search for evidence to corroborate his claims. The Chadwick family lived in a gated community with a manned guard shack with video surveillance, which provided detectives with valuable footage. On the footage from October 10th at 1:30 p.m., the detectives saw Peter Chadwick's SUV leaving the premises. However, they could not determine if either Juan or QC's body was also inside the car. Further investigation revealed additional video footage of Peter's vehicle going through a toll booth on a freeway. The footage suggested that there was only one person inside the car. This discrepancy with Peter's original story raised suspicion among the detectives. The detectives then spoke to the California Highway Patrol officer who pulled over Peter Chadwick on October 10th. This officer confirmed that Peter was the only person inside the vehicle. In addition to the video footage, detectives discovered a handwritten letter by QC highlighting Peter's disturbing Google searches she had come across. One of the searches mentioned in the letter was how to torture. When the detectives reviewed the medical records of QC, they discovered that she had been recently diagnosed with sexually transmitted diseases. It was later discovered that Peter was engaging in affairs and was failing to use protection. Consequently, he brought the diseases home to QC. Several of QC's close friends came forward with the information during their investigation. QC's friends revealed that although QC had mentioned the idea of divorce to them, Peter was resistant. According to QC's friends, Peter would never agree to a divorce as it would threaten his financial stability. QC had access to a significant amount of money, and in the event of divorce, Peter would lose access to this wealth. On October 11, 2012, Peter was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. He pleaded not guilty to the charges, maintaining his innocence throughout the court proceedings. Peter's attorney contacted detectives 1 week after Peter's arrest. The attorney informed the detectives that Peter was willing to provide the location of QC's body. Peter claimed the location was in South San Diego, specifically Wildcat Canyon. Wildcat Canyon is a mountainside area off the beaten path. Additionally, Peter stated that the body could be found in a dumpster in the area. Upon receiving this information, the crime scene investigators promptly headed to the specific location. Upon reaching Wildcat Canyon, they focused on the dumpster Peter had described. Inside the dumpster, they discovered several items belonging to QC. They found her purse, identification card, and significant cash totaling $20,000. Furthermore, the investigators spotted a green comforter in the dumpster. Upon closer examination, they discovered that it contained arms and legs, leading them to believe that it was part of QC's body. The discovery was disheartening, as it indicated that the detectives had indeed found QC's remains. At the medical examiner's office, an autopsy was performed on the body, confirming it to be QC, which revealed that the cause of death was strangulation. Peter Chadwick, despite being charged with a heinous crime of murder, was granted $1 million bail by the judge. This decision was made because Peter had no criminal history and ties to the state due to having 3 sons. The conditions imposed on his parole included surrendering his passport, ensuring that he could not leave the country, and prohibiting him from having any contact with QC's family. While Peter was out of jail on bond, he lived with his father in Santa Barbara. During this time, he diligently attended all of his court hearings and made an effort to spend quality time with his 3 sons. However, the truth behind his actions was that he was planning to escape. Unbeknownst to the detectives, Peter had emptied his safe deposit box and made several cash advances on his credit cards. When it was discovered that Peter had gone missing, a massive search began to locate him. Due to Peter's wealth, the detectives encountered difficulties in locating him. They eventually sought assistance from the U.S. Marshals, hoping their resources and expertise would help them find Peter. After analyzing footage from the airport, the detectives discovered that Peter had taken a cab to Santa Barbara Airport. Upon Peter's arrival, he sat in the airport for a short time before leaving again. The detectives were able to obtain footage of the cab that picked up Peter and transported him to an unknown destination. To gain further insights into Peter's whereabouts, the detectives conducted a thorough search of his home in Santa Barbara. During this search, they discovered a significant amount of literature and DVDs related to Canada. Additionally, they found books on how to live life on the run. After analyzing the evidence, the detectives concluded that Peter was likely on his way to the Washington border with the intention of entering Canada. The detectives' suspicions were further fueled by statements obtained from Peter's sons. They revealed that their father had informed them of his plans to go on the run. Peter had shared his intention to walk across the Canadian border and find a menial job to save money, with the ultimate goal of reuniting with his sons. For 3 years, the U.S. Marshals followed up on leads that Peter was spotted in Canada. But their efforts hit dead end after dead end. The hunt for Peter Chadwick, who was wanted for fleeing justice, had spanned several years, involving dozens of officers and numerous leads. However, the case remained unsolved, and the search seemed futile. In August 2018, the detectives decided to renew their interest in Peter Chadwick's case. They believed a more aggressive approach was needed to bring him to justice. As a result, a detective approached the Public Information Office at their department and discussed the potential of reintroducing the case on a global scale. After careful consideration, the detective and the Public Information Officer agreed that a renewed push was necessary. The officers believed Peter Chadwick could have fled anywhere, making it crucial to spread the story far and wide. Given the popularity of podcasts in 2018, the detective and the Public Information Officer thought a podcast on the case could effectively attract new leads and raise awareness. They named the podcast Countdown to Capture, and the first episode aired in September 2018. The podcast immediately sparked a surge of interest in the Chadwick case. Tips flooded the tip line from around the world, including locations as far away as Ukraine and Japan. People claimed to have seen Peter Chadwick in various places, providing valuable information to the detectives. To further assist in the efforts to track Peter Chadwick, the U.S. Marshals placed him on their 15 most wanted list and offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. This reward increased awareness and incentive for individuals to come forward with any information they held. During the final episode of the podcast Countdown to Capture, the lead detective left a direct message for his target. The detective made it clear that it was time for Peter to put an end to this case, urging him to consider the impact of his actions on his sons. In a stern tone, the detective warned Peter that the police would soon be closing in on him. As the search for Peter continued, the detectives and U.S. Marshals learned that Peter did not head towards Canada when he fled justice years earlier, but Mexico. They discovered that Peter was hiding in Pátzcuaro, a city that proved ideal for him to blend in and go unnoticed. Pátzcuaro is a charming town located in the state of Michoacán, Mexico. It is known for its traditional colonial architecture, with brightly painted buildings and cobblestone streets. The city is known for its colorful markets and traditional handicrafts, such as ceramics, textiles, and woodwork. Peter checked into a cheap hotel using the name Paul Cook and introduced himself as a relative of those who disappeared on the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. This clever tactic allowed him to gain the trust of the locals and maintain a low profile. During his time in Pátzcuaro, Peter sought the assistance of a local realtor to help him find an apartment. However, the realtor later described him as strange and without a soul. Despite his peculiar behavior, Peter managed to establish a connection with a woman named Claudia Sato. The two began spending time together, and their friendship grew stronger. In May 2016, Peter, Claudia, and Claudia's sister embarked on a trip to a concert. Claudia's sister noticed Peter driving erratically during the journey and asked him to slow down. Instead of complying, Peter continued his reckless driving, leading to an accident. Claudia Sato was killed in the accident, while her sister sustained serious injuries. She was in a coma for 15 days. Meanwhile, Peter walked away with a limp. After the tragic accident that resulted in the death of Claudia and the severe injuries of her sister, the district attorney's office contacted the Sato family and asked them to sign a document granting Paul Cook immunity in Claudia's death. The document absolved Paul Cook of all wrongdoing and portrayed him as a good person who was not involved in the incident. Faced with the immense distress caused by Claudia's death and the suffering of her sister, the family agreed to sign the papers without asking questions. However, after settling the initial shock and grief, they realized they had made a huge mistake. Unfortunately, by then it was too late. Peter Chadwick, the main suspect in the case, had fled once again. As the search continued, the U.S. Marshals learned of Peter's presence in Valdebravo. Valdebravo is a small and charming town in the Mexican state of Puebla. It is known for its picturesque scenery, crystal-clear lakes, and lush forests. Peter became frightened after seeing an investigation report broadcast about him. 2 hours later, when his iPad stopped working, he was convinced that the marshals had found his location. As a result, Peter hastily left town and headed to Cholula. Cholula is considered one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, with a history that dates back thousands of years. It is known for its rich history, cultural heritage, and the famous Cholula hot sauce named after the town. The town is known for its traditional music and dance, which often included colorful costumes and lively performances. In August 2019, the detectives received a tip that assisted the U.S. Marshals in zeroing in on Peter's location. Within 24 hours, they found Peter and promptly arrested him. He was then extradited to the U.S. to face charges for the murder of his wife. Peter pleaded guilty to the charge, admitting his guilt. The judge presiding over the case sentenced Peter to 15 years to life, reflecting the severity of his actions. Analija Bajic, a native of the war town of Serbia, was born in 1983. Growing up in Belgrade, Anna pursued her passion for the French language and literature by obtaining a bachelor's degree at the University of Belgrade. In 2005, she decided to emigrate to the United States, where she gained dual citizenship. After settling in Virginia, Anna embarked on a new journey as a hotel housekeeper. However, her dedication, motivation, and compassion soon caught the attention of her employers, leading to a series of prestigious opportunities at high-end hotels and resorts throughout New England. One such establishment was the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, Massachusetts. While working at the Wheatley, Anna crossed paths with Brian Walsh. At the time, Anna was already in a serious relationship with someone else. However, Anna's divorce provided an opportunity for her to reconnect with Brian Walsh in 2014. Brian Walsh was a complex man with a checkered past. He was the son of a prominent neurologist who ran the neurology department at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. Despite coming from generational wealth, he had a complex background that led to his emotional and psychological struggles. According to news reports, Brian's parents neglected him, leaving him feeling unloved and emotionally damaged. Brian's parents enrolled him in a top-notch boarding school in Rhode Island, hoping the quality education would compensate for their lack of attention. However, instead of nurturing him, they sent him away, further exacerbating his sense of abandonment. After completing his education at the boarding school, Brian enrolled at the prestigious Carnegie Mellon University. However, his studies didn't last very long, as he had to leave when he entered a mental health facility. Although Brian's parents had the means to pay for his care, they failed to decide who should take responsibility for his treatment. As a result, he was forced to leave the facility without the necessary support. Brian wore many hats in his life, and his passion for the finer things in life was evident. One news report described an incident where Brian purchased an entire stock of white truffles at a restaurant, showcasing his wealth. Another person shared that even as a teen, Brian exhibited this behavior, wearing a suit and tie and sipping Pepsi in the lobby of a Ritz-Carlton while interacting with high-powered brokers. In 2015, Brian's life took a turn when he met Anna and got engaged. The couple eventually married and had their first child, followed by 2 more children a few years later. Anna and Brian Walsh's life was not without its struggles. The couple faced various challenges, including legal troubles related to fraudulent art dealings. Using Anna's eBay account, Brian listed 2 Andy Warhol paintings as originals. In the description, he claimed that he was being forced to sell them due to a recent remodel. Despite Brian's false claims, someone from California paid $80,000 for the paintings. However, upon receiving the artwork, the buyer discovered the paintings were fraudulent and sued Anna and Brian. The person who purchased the fraudulent paintings accused Anna of using her position in the hospitality industry to gain their trust and allow her husband to sell the forged art in a civil suit. While Anna's precise knowledge of her husband's fraudulent art dealings remains uncertain, she wrote a letter to the judge praising Brian for his role as a stay-at-home father. Despite Anna's best efforts, it was evident that she was also preparing for the possibility of Brian facing a lengthy prison sentence. Anna had already taken steps to move herself and her son's belongings into her Washington, D.C. home, indicating she was planning to make the move permanent. Anna was a remarkable woman. She was an exceptional person, professionally and personally, known for her unwavering dedication and compassion. Everyone around her felt her presence, and her impact on their lives was undeniable. One of the most remarkable aspects of Anna's character was her unwavering commitment to her work. She approached her job with utmost seriousness and never took shortcuts. Her confidence and expertise in her field were evident as she consistently delivered high-quality results. However, despite the demands of her career, Anna's 3 sons held a special place in her heart. She was a devoted mother who prioritized her family above all else. Her tireless efforts were driven by a strong desire to provide her children with the best possible life. Anna's 3 sons were her world, and she cherished every moment she spent with them. Despite frequently being away on business trips, Anna ensured she was always within reach. Modern technology such as text messages, phone calls, and FaceTime allowed her to stay connected with her children regardless of physical location. This constant communication provided her with a sense of reassurance and allowed her to maintain a strong bond with them. While Anna traveled for work, Brian remained home caring for their 3 sons. This arrangement was due to an art fraud scheme that Brian was involved in, which required him to stay at home under house arrest. With Anna frequently away, Brian had to step up and ensure the boys were all taken care of. He made it his goal to provide a loving and nurturing home for them. Brian knew his boys were relying on him for everything, and he took that responsibility seriously. He dedicated his time to being there for them and providing them with all the care and attention they needed. In addition to providing a loving home, Brian also took on additional responsibility. He made sure the house was organized and running smoothly. On New Year's Eve 2022, Anna and Brian's close friend arrived at their home at 8:30 p.m. to celebrate the holiday. Anna greeted the friend at the door happily and in good spirits as Brian dinner in the kitchen. Throughout the night, the trio engaged in various activities, including taking photos and making plans for the future. The friend left at 1:30 a.m., and at that time, nothing seemed wrong at the Walsh household. Later on New Year's Day, the friend texted Anna and Brian to thank them for the fun night. However, Anna never responded, and only Brian wrote back. Considering her usual promptness, It seemed odd that Anna would not reply, but her friend thought nothing of it. Anna had a flight booked on January 3rd from Logan International Airport to Washington, D.C., but on January 4th, her superiors at Tishman Speyer and her husband Brian reported her missing. When the detectives investigating Anna's disappearance spoke to her husband Brian, he explained that on January 1st, 2022, Anna left the house early to get a flight from Logan International Airport to Washington, D.C. due to a work emergency. Brian stated that Anna took a rideshare service to the airport, but he was asleep when she left. However, the detectives could not confirm that Anna had called an Uber or Lyft or had gotten on a flight on January 1st. Additionally, her credit card and debit cards had not been used. The detectives asked their counterparts in Washington, D.C. to check Anna's residence in their city to see if she was there, but they could find no sign of her. A search began in a wooded area near her Cohasset home. Crime scene investigators equipped with canine units combed through the Walsh's property and adjacent land in search of clues. In addition to the local police department, state and regional police departments were deployed to assist in the search and rescue efforts. Over 50 officers were actively involved in the search, utilizing their expertise and resources to locate any signs of Anna. Divers were also involved in the investigation, searching the area's streams for potential leads. Unfortunately, their efforts yielded no sign of Anna. Despite extensive efforts, there was no indication as to where she may have gone. 6 days after Anna vanished, a local police detective received a ransom note demanding $127,000. The email from richardwalker9984@gmail.com at 5:18 p.m. stated, "We have the so-named Anna Walsh here. We had a deal for $127,000. But she messed up. We have her here with us, and if she doesn't pay the money, then she'll never be back. We know that the FBI and police are involved. Good luck finding us." However, the ransom note failed to provide any instructions regarding how the police were to respond or meet the requirements. As the investigation into Anna's disappearance continued, the detectives working on her case uncovered several intriguing details about her husband, Brian. In the early 2000s, Brian approached his parents about a real estate deal involving an old dilapidated home in Lenox. Brian proposed that his father would pay for the renovations and he would split the profit with him when he sold the property. However, things took a turn when Brian's father invested significant money into the renovations. The renovation project ended up costing Brian's father around $500,000. On the night of the closing, when Brian was supposed to repay his father for his investment, he suddenly disappeared without contacting his family. This incident left Brian's father feeling betrayed, leading to estrangement between them. Furthermore, the detectives learned that in 2019, following the attempted to sell his father's home, even though he was disinherited from the will. Additionally, Brian was accused of writing $30,000 in bad checks. However, the most disturbing information the detectives discovered occurred in 2014, when Anna and Brian were engaged. Anna had called the police and informed them that Brian had threatened to kill her over the phone. However, the case was dropped after Anna stopped cooperating with the authorities. The detectives managed to speak to Anna's mother, who was overseas at the time. According to Anna's mother, Anna begged her to come to the United States the last time they spoke. Anna's mother stated that she had a feeling that something bad was going on. With Anna being missing and coupled with Brian's threats and legal troubles, Brian emerged as the prime suspect in his wife's disappearance. The detectives discovered that in the days before Anna went missing, Brian had his mother hire a private investigator to track Anna's movements. This decision was made after Brian lost contact with her for 24 hours while she was in Washington, D.C. Brian had become suspicious, convinced that she was cheating on him. Brian spent his days closely monitoring Anna's Instagram and Facebook accounts while she was in D.C., searching for any clues that might indicate she was cheating on him. His suspicions had been growing for some time, and this investigation was only intensifying his doubts. During the investigation into Anna's disappearance, the detectives made a crucial discovery. They learned that Anna had been in a romantic relationship with a man based in Washington, D.C. When detectives contacted the man in question, he assured them that his relationship with Anna was open and honest. They had even spent Christmas Eve together. Based on the man's alibi, he was quickly ruled out as a suspect in Anna's disappearance. Despite this, the fact that Anna was having an affair and that Brian knew about it created a motive for him to have been involved in her disappearance. On January 9th, Brian Walsh was arrested for misleading the police during the investigation. His 3 sons, who were previously under his care, were placed in the custody of the DCFS, Department of Child Family Services. After Brian's arrest for misleading the police, he pleaded not guilty. Brian misled the police by providing false information during questioning. On New Year's Day, he told the detectives that he left his home at 3 p.m. to visit his mother, but got lost because he forgot to take his cell phone. However, upon further investigation, it was discovered that Brian's story did not align with the evidence collected. Detectives received security camera footage from the Whole Foods and CVS, the stores he claimed he stopped at during his alleged journey. Upon reviewing the footage, there was no sign of Brian. Furthermore, he was unable to provide any receipts for the items he said he had purchased there. As a result, detectives were suspicious and thoroughly searched Brian's residence in Cohasset, Massachusetts. In the basement of the Walsh residence, investigators discovered a damaged, bloody knife. This discovery prompted them to take the knife for evidence, testing it at the crime lab. The crime scene investigators carried out an extensive search of Anna and Brian's home, confiscating the couple's and their children's electronic devices. Anna and Brian's sons' iPads were thoroughly examined among the seized devices. Upon processing the iPad, investigators discovered several disturbing searches made by Brian between 5:45 a.m. and 7:47 a.m. in 2023. These searches included queries such as how long before a body starts to smell, how to stop a body from decomposing, how to bury a dead body, 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to, can you throw away body parts, what does formaldehyde do, can identification be made from partial remains, dismemberment and best ways to dispose of a body, what happens when you put a body in ammonia, hacksaw best tool to dismember, can you be charged with murder without a body, luminol to detect, blood, how long for someone to be missing to inherit, how to clean blood from wooden floor, is it better to throw away crime scene clothes or wash them? On January 2, 2022, the investigators reviewed CCTV footage that caught Brian Walsh visiting Home Goods and purchasing 3 rugs. Further investigation revealed disturbing Google searches made by Brian Walsh on January 2nd, including searches such as can you identify a body with broken teeth. Additionally, on that same day, January 2nd, investigators came across Brian Walsh's footage on Home Depot surveillance cameras. He was seen pushing a cart filled with various cleaning items including mops, brushes, tape, baking soda, goggles, face masks, tarp, drop cloths, rubber gloves, and other items totaling $450. This behavior appeared suspicious as it suggested a cleanup operation. The detectives obtained further security camera footage, this time from an apartment complex in Abington on January 3rd. This video depicted Brian Walsh walking towards a dumpster carrying a trash bag. Brian's walk and the effort he put into hefting the bag into the led detectives to conclude that its contents were heavy. However, when investigators arrived at the scene in Abington, they were disappointed to discover that the dumpster's contents had already been taken to the dump site and shredded before being incinerated. This setback hindered their efforts to gather additional evidence as the trash bag and its potentially incriminating contents had been destroyed. Upon searching the dumpster at Brian's mother's home in January, detectives discovered several items that raised suspicion. Among these were trash bags stained with blood, towels, rags, a Tyvek protective suit, goggles, slippers, and Anna Walsh's COVID-19 vaccination card, a hacksaw, cutting blades, a purse and boots matching the ones Anna was last seen wearing were found. Furthermore, a portion of a necklace that Anna had worn on New Year's Eve was discovered at the scene. After the items were processed at the crime lab, Anna and Brian's DNA was found on the slippers and the suit. This development further solidified the connection between the 2 items and strengthened the case against Brian. On the night of January 3rd, Brian returned home and conducted a series of disturbing Google searches. These searches included queries on topics such as what happens to hair on a dead body, what is the rate of decomposition of a body, What is the rate of decomposition on a body found in a plastic bag compared to a body found in a surface of the woods? And can baking soda make a body smell good? These searches raised even more red flags and led the detectives to believe that Brian was contemplating disposing of Anna's body. The detectives also thoroughly searched a trash transfer facility where they discovered bloodstains. On January 18th, just over 2 weeks since Anna Walsh had gone missing, Brian Walsh was arrested once again, this time charged with murder and disintegrating a body without authority. According to the prosecutors, Brian Walsh murdered his wife Anna by beating her to death. Following the murder, prosecutors said that Brian dismembered Anna's remains and disposed of them in an illicit manner. Anna's mysterious disappearance in the United States sparked widespread media attention and garnered significant attention in the country. The Serbian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through the Serbian Consulate General in New York, actively engaged with the Norfolk District Attorney's Office to obtain information to give Anna's mother, who was residing in Serbia. In 2024, Brian Walsh was sentenced to a 37-month prison term for an art fraud case. During the summer of the same year, the prosecution informed the media that they were still waiting for the DNA test results on all the evidence collected. However, they expressed confidence that the answers were forthcoming and anticipated receiving the results soon. Brian's case has undergone a significant change as his defense attorney has decided to step down from representing him in court. His defense attorney, who had been working on his case, ultimately decided he could no longer effectively fulfill his duties. As a result, Brian's case was transferred to the public defender, Larry Tipton, an experienced attorney who specializes in representing clients facing criminal charges. When a case is transferred from one attorney to another, the new attorney must review all relevant information and evidence gathered throughout the legal process. This discovery process allows the new attorney to familiarize themselves with the case, identify potential weaknesses, and develop an effective defense strategy. In Brian's case, the discovery review process has proven particularly challenging, with over 1,000 pages of discovery to review. Larry Tipton was faced with a significant task. In January 2023, a psychotherapist named Dr. Robbie Ludwig spoke to News Nation and offered a speculative opinion on the situation involving Anna Walsh and her marriage. According to Dr. Ludwig, she believed that Anna may have been in an abusive relationship and danger. Dr. Ludwig's statements were based on her own experiences and opinions, as she neither knew or treated either Anna nor her husband Brian Walsh. While on News Nation, Dr. Ludwig suggested that there may have been underlying dynamics in the relationship between Anna and Brian Walsh. She speculated that Brian may have been intimidated by his wife's financial success and not financially bringing home money. This insecurity, according to Dr. Ludwig, could have exacerbated any mental health issues Brian already faced, such as depression, anxiety, and rage. Dr. Ludwig's theory revolved around the idea that Brian may have felt at risk of losing everything he had, including his wife and their 3 sons, a luxurious home, and pride. During that same segment on News Nation, a picture of Anna was broadcast, and she posted it on Instagram before her disappearance. The image was a selfie that showed Anna with a wound about her eye, and the caption read, "Mild concussion, bruised lip, and a cut. #vulnerability. However, there is no evidence to suggest that Brian had anything to do with the wound on Anna. Anna Walsh's friends and family are deeply concerned about laying her to rest properly, as they believe she deserves a proper funeral. Unfortunately, they lack the necessary resources, and the prime suspect in her disappearance, her husband Brian, is not speaking. As a result, they are unable to carry out the necessary arrangements. Until they solve the mystery surrounding her murder, formal funeral arrangements for Anna have not been made. Robert Lemon, known to his loved ones as Rob, was a man with a heart of gold. From the outside, his large stature and tattoo of his last name on the back of his head might appear intimidating, but those close to him knew that he was a gentle giant, a big teddy bear with a kind soul. When Robert and his wife Sabrina first met, they instantly connected. Sabrina, a sweet and loving person, instantly resonated with Robert's character. Despite their differences, they formed a deep bond and fell in love. Faith was deeply important to them, and they attended Mass together every Sunday. In 2000, Robert and Sabrina were baptized in the same church, solidifying their commitment to each other. They later exchanged vows in a beautiful ceremony in Arizona, surrounded by their family and friends. Over the years, the couple had 2 children, dedicating their lives to raising a loving and stable family. Actually, Robert and Sabrina decided it was time for a change and relocated to Silver Lakes, California, a picturesque town located 99 miles from Los Angeles. Silver Lakes was a peaceful family community that offered a perfect setting to raise their young family. Sabrina stayed home and cared for the house and children, while Robert worked at BNSF Railway, a job he loved. Robert's job at the rail yards was both his passion and a source of pride. He genuinely loved what he did and excelled in his role. His superiors admired him for his reliability and his unwavering work ethic. The rail yards were a bustling and chaotic environment. Despite Robert's dedication, the work was not without danger. The area was frequented by thieves who would patrol the rail yards looking for cargo to steal. These individuals posed a significant threat to the safety of the employees. However, Robert never let these security concerns deter him from his job and remained vigilant. With Robert's size and smarts, he could easily take down any opponent, human or animal. Robert was more than just a man. He was a force of nature. Robert's personal life was as vibrant and dynamic as his personality. He and his wife Sabrina, 2 peas in a pod, had an active social life and loved nothing more than throwing parties and hosting gatherings at their home in Silver Lakes. They were known for their warm and welcoming personality, attracting people from all walks of life into their circle of friends. But what captivated everyone about Robert and Sabrina was their youthful energy and unbreakable bond. Robert and Sabrina were like a couple of teenagers in love, not a long-time married couple. They had adorable names for one another and were always laughing, leaving those around them feeling uplifted and inspired. Robert's attentiveness and dedication to Sabrina left many of her girlfriends envious. They wished their husbands were as attentive and considerate as Robert. He seemed to know exactly what Sabrina needed and would always support her, making her feel valued and loved. Even though Robert and Sabrina's social circle was large, at the core of their friendship was a group of tight-knit men and women who referred to themselves as the Wolf Pack. This wolf pack included Jason Bernatine, a firefighter in Silver Lakes, and his wife Kelly, a hairdresser. As the years went by, Robert and Sabrina became the go-to people for these parties, creating a fun atmosphere filled with laughter and good times. Alcohol played a significant role in the lives of Robert and Sabrina. They embraced the mantra, "It's 5 o'clock somewhere," as their go-to phrase whenever the urge to drink struck. The heavy drinking accompanied a changing dynamic in their marriage. Due to the changes in their relationship, the couple decided to embark on an open arrangement, allowing each other to explore relationships with other people. One of the couples they frequently socialized with was their friends Jason and Kelly. Despite the unconventional nature of their arrangement, Robert and Sabrina seemed happier than ever. They presented the image of an ideal modern American family. On Sunday, August 17, 2017, Robert embarked on his usual 85-mile journey to work at the BNSF Railways in Tehachapi. Robert, covering for a coworker, had a scheduled shift at the BNSF warehouse, a mundane industrial building on the outskirts of the city. As the night progressed, Sabrina awaited Robert's return. This night held a special significance for the couple, as their daughter's first day of school was the following day. The couple's daughter did not want to go to bed without getting a kiss goodnight from her daddy. However, Sabrina's concern grew when Robert never returned home. Meanwhile, in Tehachapi, at the BNSF warehouse, Robert's replacement for the night arrived to find Robert lying lifeless on the floor. The coworker, in shock, immediately called 911, alerting the authorities to the situation. Officers and paramedics arrived at the scene within minutes, but their efforts proved to be in vain. Despite their best efforts, the medics were unable to save Robert. Robert was found sitting against his work truck. Upon examination, the detective saw that Robert had been shot twice, once in the upper torso and once in the head. The crime scene investigators immediately secured and processed the crime scene, a small warehouse belonging to the BNSF. As investigators meticulously examined the premises, they stumbled upon a crucial piece of evidence, an expended bullet found above Robert's head. This bullet was collected for evidence testing, as investigators sought to piece together the puzzle of this heinous crime. As investigators delved deeper into the crime scene, they walked into the warehouse office and noticed it had been ransacked. Drawers were pulled out, their contents strewn across the floor. Shop manuals, binders, and important documents lay scattered about, seemingly tossed aside in a haphazard manner. Initially, the detectives at the scene believed that the killing of Robert was a crime of opportunity. A suspect looking to perpetrate a robbery had stumbled upon the unsuspecting victim and opened fire, leaving him lifeless on the ground. However, as the investigation progressed, the detectives began to question their initial assumptions. Upon closer examination, the detectives realized the crime scene had been staged. News of Robert's murder reached Sabrina, Robert's wife. The devastating news shattered her world, leaving her in a state of shock and grief. Sabrina retreated to her room, shut off from the outside world, and wanted no part in planning his funeral. During the investigation into Robert's murder, the detectives faced a peculiar challenge. Everyone who knew Robert described him as an exceptional person. Robert's friends and family painted a picture of a man who had it all: charm, intelligence, and charisma. According to them, he was the type of man every woman wanted. This overwhelming praise for Robert confused the detectives. If Robert was such a great man, why would someone want to shoot him in cold blood? The detectives were left scratching their heads, unable to find any logical motive behind such a crime. As the investigation progressed, the detectives found themselves at a standstill. There were no witnesses to the shooting and no evidence at the scene that could lead them to a suspect. The only person they were left with to question was Robert's wife, Sabrina. Sabrina assured the investigators that she and her husband had an excellent relationship. She expressed her shock at the realization that someone would want to harm Robert. Although the crime scene yielded a bullet fragment, it provided no evidentiary value. However, the detectives were able to determine that the bullet had come from a .44 or .45 Magnum weapon. Despite the lack of solid leads, the detectives remained determined to uncover the truth behind Robert's murder. Their determination was fueled by the desire to bring justice to a man who, by all accounts, deserved nothing better but the best in his life. In an effort to piece together the puzzle, the detectives received the security camera footage from the warehouse where Robert worked. However, to their dismay, the camera fitted inside his work truck was not running at the time of the incident, rendering it useless. The only camera that captured any footage was outside the warehouse. As the detectives watched the footage, they spotted a person with a limp walking through the warehouse complex around the time they believed Robert was shot. Unfortunately, the grainy quality of the video made it difficult to identify any features of this person. However, the detectives felt confident that it was a man, not a woman, based on the shape of the person's body. Robert's employer, BNSF Railway, stepped in to help in the search for answers. They offered a $1,000 reward for any information that could lead to an arrest. This incentive generated a flood of leads from various tipsters, but unfortunately, none were relevant to Robert's shooting. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they discovered additional video footage of Robert on the day he was killed. This footage was obtained from local businesses located along Goodrich Drive, near the warehouse where Robert was shot. The detectives carefully reviewed the footage. They were able to identify and track every motorist who passed by the area during that time. However, there was one notable exception. Despite their best efforts, the detectives were unable to identify the person driving a motorcycle who passed by the area around the time Robert was murdered. This mysterious motorcycle driver stood out to the detectives. They felt strongly that the person was connected to the crime, but could not identify them due to a helmet obscuring their face. The identity of the motorcyclist remained a mystery, adding to the frustrations of the investigation. Despite their extensive efforts, the detectives were unable to determine who the person was. As the detectives worked tirelessly to unravel the truth behind the crime, they received an unexpected lead from Robert's friend, Jason Bernentine. 3 weeks after Robert's murder, Jason came forward with important information that could shed light on the case. He contacted the detective working on Robert's murder investigation and divulged details about a man named Jonathan Hearn. According to Jason, Jonathan was a firefighter and used to work with him. Jason revealed suspicions about Jonathan's relationship with Robert's wife, Sabrina Limon. He informed the detective that Jonathan had called him and left a voicemail expressing remorse for Robert's passing. However, the content of the message was confounding. Jonathan never explicitly admitted involvement in the murder, but expressed apologies for what had happened. Jason turned over more evidence to the police regarding Jonathan Hearn. This evidence was a letter written by Jonathan in which he repeatedly apologized for something. However, the letter failed to provide insight into what exactly Jonathan was apologizing for. Furthermore, Jason's wife, Kelly, shared her suspicions with the detectives. According to her, Jonathan had been spending a significant amount of time at Sabrina and Robert's home following Robert's murder. Kelly found this strange. The detectives began their investigation by looking into Jonathan Hearn's background. They discovered that in 2012, Sabrina, the victim's girlfriend, worked part-time at Costco. Coincidentally, Jonathan was a frequent shopper at this store. Sabrina and Jonathan struck up a conversation and a connection was formed. After exchanging phone numbers, they soon found themselves in a romantic relationship. However, Robert, unaware of the ongoing affair, stumbled upon intimate text messages on Sabrina's phone. This discovery shattered his trust in her. Sabrina assured Robert that she would end things with Jonathan, but that promise proved empty. As the detectives explored various leads, they discovered that Jonathan Hearn had access to motorcycle. This discovery raised suspicions as the detectives believed that the suspect had used a motorcycle to carry out Robert's murder. Further investigation revealed that there was a Yamaha motorcycle registered to Jonathan. That information added fuel to the detectives' theory that Jonathan Hearn may have been involved in the murder. The evidence of the motorcycle and that Jonathan had been involved in a romantic relationship with Sabrina behind Robert's back made him a plausible suspect. In a desperate attempt to gather more footage of the suspect, the detectives focused on pulling CCTV footage from businesses in the area. Their efforts paid off when they stumbled upon footage of the motorcycle driver pulling into a nearby Pilot gas station. The detectives found more footage of the suspect in the convenience store, where they were able to see the suspect wearing a red bandana to conceal his face. However, with the helmet still on, they were unable to identify the suspect's features. Despite their suspicions, the detectives found themselves in a predicament. Without concrete evidence linking the motorcycle driver to Jonathan Hearn, they could not make an arrest. The lack of visual identification left the investigation at a standstill. However, the detectives remained convinced that Sabrina was involved in the murder. They knew that if their theory was correct, Sabrina's lover, Jonathan, was likely the culprit. Determined to catch them in the act, the detectives placed a wiretap on Sabrina's phone. Their hope was to intercept any incriminating conversations between Sabrina and Jonathan, providing the evidence they needed to bring justice to Robert's murder. Sabrina and Jonathan spoke often, and their conversations were mainly centered around God and religion. However, there were moments when Jonathan delved deeper into his beliefs, reciting Psalm 51, also known as the Tale of David of Bethsaida. This psalm, which delves into the consequences of adultery, caught the detectives' attention as they wondered whether their discussion had a deeper meaning. Determined to get Sabrina and Jonathan to open up, the detectives devised an ingenious plan. They called Sabrina and lied, telling her that the detectives had found DNA evidence at the scene linking the suspects to Robert's murder. This ploy was designed to provoke a reaction from Sabrina and Jonathan, hoping it would prompt them to discuss their involvement in the crime. As soon as the detective hung up the phone with Sabrina, they immediately listened in on the wiretap. Sabrina wasted no time in calling her lover, Jonathan. During the call, Sabrina and Jonathan never explicitly admitted to killing Robert. However, the detectives felt the conversation was telling. Neither of them seemed thrilled at the news of the DNA evidence, leading them to believe they were hiding something. On November 18, 2014, detectives were granted search warrants for multiple locations related to Robert's murder. These searches were crucial in gathering evidence and piecing together the puzzle. At one of the search locations, the home of Jonathan, detectives stumbled upon a Yamaha motorcycle, a helmet, a red bandana, a backpack, and other items. That same day, the detectives arrested Jonathan and Sabrina. Following the arrests of Sabrina and Jonathan, Sabrina was taken to the police department for questioning. During this 4-hour interview, Sabrina adamantly denied having any involvement in her husband's murder. She maintained her innocence and refused to implicate herself in any way. Despite the efforts of the detectives, no evidence could be found to connect Sabrina to the shooting. As a result, the detectives were left with no choice other than to release her. Upon returning to Silver Lakes, Sabrina was met with an unexpected backlash from her neighbors. The community that once loved her and her husband's infamous parties now turned against her. Sabrina was subjected to harassment and threats, forcing her to pull her children out of school. The pressure became unbearable, and Sabrina made the decision to leave Silver Lakes behind. Seeking a fresh start, Sabrina relocated to Camarillo, California. On January 7, 2017, Sabrina was arrested for Robert's murder. The charges against her this time stuck, and the case finally went to trial. Jonathan emerged as the star witness for the prosecution. He testified that Sabrina had suggested divorcing Robert so that she could be with him. However, Robert made it clear that he loved her too much and would rather die than according to Jonathan. Sabrina then had the idea to plan and execute her husband's murder. According to Jonathan, the first time they attempted to murder Robert, Sabrina mixed arsenic into his banana pudding with vanilla wafers. However, the attempt was unsuccessful and Robert survived. Undeterred, Sabrina and Jonathan planned a second attack. She showed him images of the warehouse and the surrounding area, describing the layout in great detail. Jonathan claimed Sabrina wanted him to know what to expect when he entered the warehouse to shoot Robert. On August 17, 2017, Jonathan confessed to the jury that he made a trip to the warehouse on his motorcycle, following Sabrina's instructions. He arrived and confirmed the CCTV footage that showed a man with a limp entering. However, Jonathan admitted that he had faked the limp to throw off the police, hoping to divert attention away from himself. Once inside the warehouse, Jonathan confronted Robert. He admitted to shooting Robert, following Sabrina's instructions, to make the scene look like a robbery. Jonathan stated that he went into the office and made a mess. Before leaving the warehouse, Jonathan said he realized Robert was not dead. He was still breathing. Jonathan admitted he shot Robert a second time, this time in the head. After committing the murder, Jonathan fled the scene on his motorcycle. Feeling a mixture of belief and guilt, he quickly made his way back home. Upon his return, Jonathan discovered that he had received numerous missed calls from Sabrina. Jonathan immediately called Sabrina back and confessed that he had carried out the murder. As the trial progressed, the prosecution called Sabrina Lemon to the stand. Sabrina was the key witness for the defense, and her statements left the courtroom buzzing with speculation. During her testimony, Sabrina said that she and Robert were on good terms at the time of his death, but she also testified that she had feelings for Jonathan Hearn. Sabrina admitted to having a romantic relationship with Jonathan, but insisted that she never planned on leaving Robert. She claimed that she and Jonathan were merely exploring their options and exploring a future together, while still committed to their respective marriages. However, the prosecution argued that Sabrina's actions did not align with her claims. One of the key aspects of the prosecution's case was the belief that Sabrina may have murdered Robert for financial gain. They argued that Robert's life insurance money could provide the perfect motive. However, Sabrina denied the allegations, stating that any funds she received were placed in a savings account for their children's living expenses. She claimed that she never intended to use the money for her own gain. Sabrina insisted that she had no prior knowledge or involvement in his death. However, the prosecution presented evidence to the jury that showed Sabrina did not act like a grieving widow after the shooting. They presented text messages that Sabrina and Jonathan exchanged, revealing their continued romantic relationship. In one text, Sabrina calls Jonathan a sexy guy and professes her love for him. Sabrina even wrote that she had a desire to kiss Jonathan all over, non-stop. After a lengthy trial, Sabrina Lemon was found guilty of 4 of the 6 counts against her, including first-degree murder, attempted murder, solicitation, and conspiracy to commit murder. Sabrina was acquitted of the charge of alleged poisoning. The guilty verdict brought a sense of relief to Robert's family and friends, who had eagerly awaited justice. However, the acquittal on the poisoning charge left some unanswered questions and speculation. In November 2017, Jonathan Hearn was sentenced to the terms of his plea deal. He pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter and was given his 25-year, 4-month sentence. During the sentencing hearing, Jonathan expressed remorse and apologized to Robert's family and friends. Despite his involvement, he seemed to genuinely regret his actions and the impact they had on the lives of those involved. The judge sentenced Sabrina to 25 to life, plus an additional 16 months. Despite her conviction, Sabrina showed no remorse and filed an appeal with a new attorney. In Sabrina's appeal, she argued that her attorney should never have allowed her to testify. She claimed that her attorney's decision had compromised her defense and ultimately led to her conviction. Sabrina claimed that her attorney had failed to prepare for the trial and failed to protect her interests. Sabrina's appeal went through the state courts, but ultimately, her conviction was upheld. Frustrated, Sabrina decided to take her case to federal court. The case received significant attention, with legal experts and media outlets speculating about the possibility of her acquittal. However, in January 2023,